Hello, welcome to the self-learning platform by Dr. Sushma Singh. Today we start Unit 3, Marxist and Other Radical Approaches. Now, the introduction of the unit. The Marxist approach to the study of international relations contrasts sharply with the conventional paradigms discussed in the earlier units. What makes the Marxist approach unconventional is its insistence on the need for change. Unlike the realist and liberal, it is not status quo and stands for radical change of the existing international world order. In sharp contrast to realism and liberalism, the Marxist approach envisions a rather uncommon view of international relations. While the former portray world politics in much familiar ways of struggle for power and interdependence or complex interdependence, the Marxists seek to go to the roots of world politics by exposing a deeper underlying hidden truth. To the Marxist, a truth lies in the fact that all the familiar events of the world politics, like wars, treaties, international aid programs, etc., take place within structures which deeply influence these events. What are these structures then? These are the structures of a global capitalist system. Any understanding of world politics, the Marxists thus argue, must be based on a broader understanding of the processes that operate within global capitalism. Now the next point is Marxist approach to study international relations. Theorists of international relations in the West have for long maintained that orthodox Marxist theory contains anything of relevance on international relations. In terms of a theoretical analysis of international relations, they are of the view that Marx himself had little to contribute. Such assertions may not be totally unfounded, given Marx's preoccupation with the analysis of the structures of national capitalism, but it would be patently wrong to assume that he never reflected on issues relevant to international relations. Although Marx was primarily concerned with analyzing the structures of national capitalism, and particularly the antagonistic relationship between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. An internationalist perspective was nevertheless implicit in his work. This was evident in Marx's recognition that class loyalties out across national divisions, which enabled him to proclaim at the end of the Communist Manifesto, "Workers of the world unite." In other words, whereas liberal and realist theories hold that power is organized vertically, reflecting the division of the world into independent states. Marxism advances a theory of horizontal organization based on international class. However, the implementation of viewing capitalism as an international system were not fully explored until Lenin's imperialism. The highest stage of capitalism. Lenin argued that imperial expansion reflected domestic capitalism's quest to maintain profit levels through the export of surplus capital, and that this in turn brought major capitalist powers into conflict with one another, the resulting war being essentially an imperialist war in the sense that it was fought for the external control of colonies in Africa, Asia, and elsewhere. Before we get down to discussing the theory of imperialism, colonialism, neo-colonialism, and hegemony, we must be clear in our minds that Marx's ideas have been interpreted and appropriated in a number of different and contradictory ways, resulting in a number of competing schools of Marxism. Underlying these different schools are several common elements that can be traced back to Marx's writings. Now let us discuss core elements of Marxist approach. All Marxists agree that the social world must be viewed and analyzed as a totality. Consequently, they not only view the academic division of the social world into different areas of inquiry like history, philosophy, economics, political science, sociology, international relations, etc., as arbitrary but also unhelpful. They instead insist that understanding one without knowledge of the other is not possible because the social world can only be studied as a whole. The need for adopting an interdisciplinary approach in any meaningful understanding of the world politics was emphasized by Marx himself in his Capital. His suggestions in this context was to start with the simplest of social relations and then proceed to build them up into a more and more complex picture. Thus, for Marxist theorists, the disciplinary boundaries that characterize the contemporary social sciences must be transcended in order to have a proper understanding of the dynamics of the world politics. Another key element of the Marxist approach is the materialist conception of history. The central argument here is that it is the economic development of a society which determines the processes of historical change. What it basically means is that economic development effectively serves as the motor of history. The central dynamic that Marx identifies is tension between the means of production, land, labor, and capital, and relations of production, the way the means of productions are arranged in any given society. that together form the economic base of a given society. Developments in the economic base act as a catalyst for the broader transformation of society as a whole. This is because, as Marx argues in his contribution to the critique of political economy, the mode of production of material life conditions the social, political, and intellectual life process in general. Thus, the legal, political, and cultural institutions and practices of a given society reflect and reinforce the pattern of power and control in economy. It follows logically, therefore, that change in the economic base ultimately leads to change in the legal and political superstructure. Marxists attribute to a very special status to class in their analysis of society, in contrast to liberals who believe that there is an essential harmony of interest between different social groups. Marxists hold that the society is systematically prone to class conflict. Marx, for example, argues in the Communist Manifesto, which he co authored with Engels, the history of all hitherto existing societies is the history of class struggle. A capitalist society, the main axis of conflict is between bourgeois or the capitalist and the proletariat, the workers. Having seen some of the essential capital elements of Marxist approach in this section, we will now turn to the task of examining some of the important theories like imperialism, colonialism, neo-colonialism, and hegemony in our next lecture. Here we want to wind up this lecture. Thank you so much for your attention.